Let's dive into a really fascinating question today. Where did Hindi literature actually come from? Because the story you might have heard, well, it's probably not the whole picture.
So, here's the big debate. For a long time, one theory dominated, that Hindi literature was born as a direct response to the arrival of Islam in India. But what if that's not right? What if its real roots go way deeper, tapping into ancient rivers of Indian thought that are literally thousands of years old? That's the mystery we're going to unravel.
And to really get to the bottom of this, we have to look at a major intellectual showdown, a debate between two absolute giants in the study of Hindi literature.
Okay, so on one side, you've got Acharya Ramchandra Shukla. His argument was that the massive political and cultural shifts that came with Islam were the main spark. But then, on the other side, you have Acharya Hazari Prasad Dwivedi. He looked at all the same evidence and came to a totally different conclusion. He famously said that even if Islam had never arrived, Hindi literature would still be, and I quote, 12 annas the same, meaning about 75% identical. For him, this was a homegrown, natural evolution.
Now, to understand Dwivedi's point of view, we have to hit the rewind button. I mean, way back, long before the medieval period. We need to explore these two incredibly powerful philosophical currents that have been shaping India for centuries.
So this is the million-dollar question, right? If this new literature wasn't just a sudden reaction to something new, then what was it building on? What were the ideas already bubbling under the surface, just waiting for a new voice to express them? First up, you have the Brahmana tradition. This is the stream of thought that flows directly from the most ancient sacred texts, the Vedas and the Upanishads. It's all about sacred knowledge, complex rituals, and the central idea that understanding the ultimate reality, or Brahman, is the only path to liberation. But, and this is a huge but, running right alongside it and often pushing against it was the Shramana tradition. This is the world of traditions like Buddhism and Jainism. These were all about asceticism, renunciation, and deep compassion. They focused on an individual's own effort to find enlightenment and were totally opposed to the big, elaborate rituals and sacrifices of the Brahmana tradition. I mean, the contrast is pretty stark when you lay it out. One is all about following sacred texts and priestly rituals. The other is about personal struggle and compassion for all beings. For centuries, these two traditions were in a constant dialogue, pushing and pulling and challenging each other. And this, right here, is the absolute key to the whole thing. The history that leads to Hindi literature isn't a story about one tradition winning. Not at all. It's the story of these two powerful ideas interacting, clashing, borrowing from each other, and creating something totally new over a vast, vast period of time. Buddhism is a perfect example of this in action. Early Buddhism was pretty exclusive, focused on monks and monasteries. But then the Mahayana school came along, and it was all about bringing these ideas to ordinary people. It kept evolving, absorbing local traditions and tantric practices. And its core ideas, things like universal compassion and salvation for everyone, they didn't just stay inside Buddhism. They spilled out and had a massive influence on the entire religious landscape of India. So, you got this incredible philosophical evolution going on. But at the same time, something huge was happening with language. The formal, elite language was starting to feel disconnected from everyday people, and that created a kind of vacuum. And Dwivedi just nailed the problem with this quote. He said that later Sanskrit literature felt like it was about an imaginary life and an imaginary world. It had become this highly specialized academic exercise that had pretty much nothing to do with the actual lives of the folks on the ground. The creative engine had basically stalled out. Instead of writing bold new poems or epic plays, the main intellectual work in Sanskrit was now writing tikas, which are commentaries on the great works of the past. The focus had shifted from creating something new to just reinterpreting the old. And this created what you could call a commentary cycle. Here's how it worked. If you had a new idea, you couldn't just state it. You had to frame it as a commentary on an ancient text to give it legitimacy. Then someone else would come along and write a commentary on your commentary. This just went on and on, creating this kind of intellectual echo chamber that really stifled any original thinking in the language. Okay, so with the classical language basically walled off in an ivory tower, the stage was perfectly set for a new literary voice to rise up from the streets, from the villages, a language for the people. Now, the Sanskrit scholars, of course, had a name for these new evolving folk languages. They called them Apabhramsha. and it literally means corrupt or fallen. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about what the establishment thought of it, right? They saw it as this broken, degraded version of the pure classical languages.
But, and this is so crucial, the people who were actually speaking this language, writing poems in it, singing songs in it, they saw things completely differently. They didn't think their language was corrupt at all. They called it Desi Bhasa, the language of the country, or Gamel Bhasa, the language of the village. For them, it was just their language.
So we have to completely reframe how we see this. Apabhramsha wasn't a ruin. It wasn't a language in decay. It was a bridge. It was the living, breathing, evolving link between the older classical languages and the modern languages like Hindi that we speak today. And you know how it often goes, right? A language gets a major boost in status when its speakers gain power. And that seems to be exactly what happened with the Abhihar people. They were a powerful community, even mentioned way back in the Mahabharata. And as they gained more and more political influence, their language, Apabhramsha, gained prestige right along with them, becoming a language worthy of literature.
All right, let's pull all these threads together. You've got the philosophical ideas merging, you have the creative decline of Sanskrit, and you've got the rise of this powerful new folk language. This is the moment. This is the true dawn of Hindi.
So, in that period between roughly 700 and 1000 AD, it's a done deal. Apabhramsha, which really you can just think of as Old Hindi, is now firmly established. It's not just a spoken dialect anymore. It is a literary language with its own poetry and stories that laid the direct foundation for everything that would become modern Hindi literature.
And this wasn't happening in some tiny, isolated pocket. This incredible transformation was taking place across a vast cultural area known as Madhya Desh, or the Middle Country. We're talking about a huge region that covers modern-day Rajasthan, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and Bihar. This whole area was the heartland where Hindi was being born.
So when you step back and look at the whole incredible story, Dwivedi's theory just makes so much sense. The emergence of Hindi literature wasn't some sudden jerky reaction to an outside event. It was the beautiful, messy culmination of 1,000 years of philosophical debate, social change, and linguistic evolution. It's a story that is profoundly and uniquely Indian. This whole journey just proves that language is a living thing, constantly being molded by the people who use it and the big ideas they carry. And it leaves us with one final thought to chew on. What are the forces shaping our languages right now? The technologies, the social movements, the new ideas. What new traditions, what new literatures are being born as we speak?